So sand top dressing today, you can see this side of the green over here is the older part. That's been there for a few seasons. I did an overseed this spring, but then over here, you can see this is all the newly seeded ryegrass over here. And again, eventually all of this will be bent grass, but for now I need to start working on leveling what's here so that eventually, once I get ready to switch everything over, it'll be nice and smooth. And this side was where we moved most of the soil, so quite a bit bumpier. This side though also has never really been leveled more than just the initial little smoothing that I did before I seeded it seasons and seasons ago. So you can see all these little scalp marks and things in here. That's all of the spots where I just cut it down with the mower about 3-4 days ago, and I've been mowing it consistently just to try to get it used to about, it's slightly under 1/2 inch right now, but that's how much leveling we need to do in order for you to not see all of those little spots in there. So for those of you wondering why you would do this sand top dressing in the first place, it's something that I definitely would not necessarily recommend for beginners, and really only if you're going to be cutting your lawn really low like I do, or doing a putting green style type of thing. In the past, at my old house, I had my front yard down to about 3/4 of an inch or so, and in order to get to that height, even with a real mower, you needed some leveling work to be done. I first started with soil and I got it pretty good and pretty even, but then eventually I wanted to go to an even more smooth surface, and that's where the sand came in. But this is a process though that is probably a little bit more advanced because there is some maintenance and some upkeep in the future. You're gonna have to add some more sand and add some more top dressing over time to make sure you're diluting the thatch layer. And after this, you do not want to add anything over top of it. So if you ever plan to do any sort of projects where you might have some topsoil going back on top of it, you don't want that. You want the coarse sand material to stay on top. So that's a short story about that. I do have some more extensive videos over the years of why I've done this sand thing. It's called sand capping. There's a lot of research that's been done about it over the years, and this is a method that they've used on push-up greens, sports fields, things like that, where they were starting with a native soil, but they needed the benefits of that sand. And what are those benefits? Well, quickly, first thing is obviously going to be those leveling properties, and it's not going to break down like soil or compost or something that has organic matter in it. So once you do the leveling work, that helps to keep things where it is for the most part. The second thing is that it's going to help with a little bit of this drainage on the top. So when I have native topsoil on here, if I get a lot of water and it doesn't drain, then those roots that are right near the top of the ground are be sitting in that soaked soil. And if you have soil that just doesn't dry out very well, but then you can have some issues with some fungus and things. So the more that we build the sand cap up on here and you get grass growing in 2-3 inches of sand, maybe eventually here, that top layer gives you just a lot more control of your moisture. Same thing goes with fertilizer. Sand doesn't have anything in there, so you are going to have to supplement the fertilizer more often, but you get more of the control of it, and you're not sitting there right in the soil that might have organic matter in it that you just can't really control what it's going on. So then you can also control thatch by adding sand back on top of this and doing some top dressings every single season. A lot of things to it. A little bit more advanced though, like I said. Something that I would really only recommend if you're after that really shortcut real mowed lawn like I'm doing here, or putting green. I took a few cores out of this yesterday, and one today it's really wet, so I really don't want to come out here and try to deal with all those cores with it being wet, but we do have more rain on the way, and I would really like to get some sand on here, get the rain to push it down into the canopy, because it's going to take more than one top dressing regardless. So I'd like to get the first layer of sand on. Also, because this is ryegrass, if you take out a whole bunch of cores and you put the sand on top, then you're definitely going to have to do an overseed, just because this stuff does not spread aggressively side to side. By the time you take all those cores out, you're going to have to put some seed back on, and I'm going to have to do that on this side for sure. But today I'm not even going to worry about this side. It is still way too wet after a little bit of rain that we had, so I'm not going to work on that side. But I would like to get the sand going on this side at least. Let that rain hopefully put it into the canopy a bit more, and then I'll do some more sand. And this side should be a lot easier to transition into a green for the time being, just because of how established it is. This has a ways to go, which I'm going to have to core aerate that, sand it, put more seed on, and it's just a process. I finally get to use this Eco top dresser that I've had for a couple seasons now. They sent me this back in my old property, and I just never had too much of a chance to use it there, just a few times a year. And so now that I'm going to have all these green projects and things to work on with sand, it's going to be so nice to use this. Today it is wet, and so I am going to fill this up, but not too full. This thing has some weight to it, and I don't want to make some huge tire marks. that I'm gonna have to fix here if I don't have to. This is mason sand. It's actually the exact same supplier that I used at my old house for all my mason sand. Got some of this delivered. It is kind of wet right now, not preferable for me to spread it, but like I said, I'm on sort of a timeline today. So if you could let it dry out a bit, that's fine. But otherwise, if you can get it spread out and you have a warm day and a sunny day, it usually will dry out on the lawn just fine, and then you can kind of brush it in after you get that done. So even if it is wet, today it's just not going to go through a regular type of spreader like you would use for granular fertilizer. It's just too wet. Today, I think I actually need some pretty heavier amounts on here. So instead of shoveling and shoveling and shoveling like crazy and putting it over onto the green here, I probably will just get the Ventrac out, put the little bucket on here, and probably put 4 or 5 big scoops of sand on here and then rake it around. And as I said, you just want to let it dry out before you try to brush it in. So that'll save me a little bit of time today, but you could certainly do it the old way, which I used to, which is just put it in a wheelbarrow, fling it out, and then just let it dry that way. I got a lot of stuff to cover today since I have the machinery to try to get this done a little quicker, and because it might possibly rain, I better get going. Well, it's really too wet to just be doing any of this today, but I do have 3 or 4 piles over here. I'm going to spread these out, see how far I can get. Maybe I can do one more load in the top dresser and put that on. We'll see if that's going to be a good start or not, but I don't think I can do much more Ventrac on here. It's just creating too much damage on the new grass that I have to cross right back over there. Let's see how far this gets me. So I feel like I should have learned my lesson by now with how many times I've spread this sand, but I was still trying to cut some corners here and get this stuff out on here faster than loading up the top dresser and doing it in small amounts. But I should have done that because, especially when it's wet, very difficult to push those piles around. I would still recommend either the flinging method, which is taking it out there, kind of using this flinging style that puts it out in light amounts. If you don't have a top dresser, then I definitely wouldn't go out with big piles and try to move them around by hand. It's just not a very fun method. So I knew that, but I still did it anyway, just because I wanted to try to accelerate the process. Alright, so here is what it looks like at the end of today. I used the Ventrac and my drag just to smooth this whole thing out. I had to get the piles down with the rake first, and then it's still not dry enough to really work into the canopy, but I wanted to at least spread this out and try to make it look fairly even so that if we do get some rain tonight, that'll push everything down, and if not, I'll come out here tomorrow morning, soak this whole thing down with a hose with pretty high pressure and get that worked in, and whatever spots are still covering some of the grass, I'll have to brush in with a broom and make sure that the grass blades stick back out of there, because I'll show you a close up here. You can definitely see grass blades coming back through, but you want to make sure on cool season grass that you have those grass blades coming back through so that things don't die. They can get the sunlight and start growing again. Probably a couple spots out through here might be just slightly heavy, but I think once everything gets soaked in, you'll be surprised what it looks like. Back for day 2, and it did rain last night about 3/10, so nothing crazy, but that was enough. I'll show you right here what it looks like. So definitely quite a bit of change from yesterday as far as how much sand was on here, and now how the rain has pushed that down into the canopy, as I mentioned. Today I was hoping it would dry out just a little bit more before we have possible heavy rain tonight. The best case scenario now would be to let this dry out, and you'll know when it starts to get dry obviously by the look on top, and then it should much more easily brush down into the grass. Next day we got an even heavier rain that helped things to settle down in, work down into the canopy even more. Then it was time to get out the aerator. Okay, so got the aerating done one pass at least, but check out some of these areas, and this is exactly why, you know, after we pack this soil in here, I just need to get some grass growing in here, some roots growing, because you come through here and I've got a good section of grass growing, but it only ends up to about right there. It's already has tons of roots in here. So that's really good, but you get down to this part right here, very, very hard. So even though the moisture is going down through there, it's just gonna take some time to get all those roots to go down into this stuff and to get it going. And that's really the reason too why I'm not going straight to doing the bent grass thing. One, as I've mentioned, just making sure over time here that I don't have too many nasty weeds in here that I would have to redo the whole thing anyway. And two, I wanna make sure that the soil is prepped as good as it can be before I get going and I get some sand down in here and get that working. The point of this today was I'm going to take off all these cores here, and that helps to incorporate the sand down into these holes. I'll have to try to lay back in here some of it, and some of it I'm just going to take out, and I got to do an overseed over top of this whole thing anyway. So if you're just aerating your home lawn, you definitely don't need to pick up the cores. The reason that I'm picking up cores here is that I want to take that native soil out of there, replace as much of it as I can with that sand down into the actual root zone, so that the grass that's there can actually start to grab onto that sand and grow into it, where I have a little bit more control of the drainage and the fertilizer and all that stuff. Usually in most cases you would just leave this on the ground, and hopefully it's in a time frame where it's going to rain, start to break those cores down, and we'll leave a little light top dressing back onto your lawn. I tried a few different various methods here. I tried shovels, I tried pushing these cores into piles, and in the end I think the best method for me this time was to use a backpack blower and try to get these all into a big pile, and then I just used a big shovel to clean them up. Then after I got more sand on there, I let it dry out this time, and we had some warm weather, which was nice, and some sunny weather, so it's as long as you get a pretty light layer on there, it dries out fairly fast. Then you can use a rake or a broom or whatever you'd like to push the sand down into those holes and make sure that's all filled up, and then just kind of smooth and level everything out as much as you possibly can. This is going to work itself down into some of the lower spots when you get a heavier rain or some type of rainfall as well, so do the best that you can. But this isn't really a one and done type of method. I'm gonna have to do some more top dressing, so things will get smoother and smoother over time too as you continue to do this process. Next thing for me here on ryegrass is that it is a bunch type grass, so each plant will tiller out and we'll get more leaves on it and we'll get thicker, but as far as spreading into big holes, it's not really going to do that. So I needed to get some more seed on here, and then I can try to get this at least mowed fairly low until I start that bent grass conversion sometime probably next season. Put on a starter fertilizer, the typical one that I just use a lot, that I had some left over. It's the Scott's with the weed preventer in it. Then I was able to reuse some of the blankets that I had originally had on this area and put them back down just on the green portion. These are just the straw blankets that I've been using. I find that you can use them probably about twice, and then as you do the roll up method and everything, the straw starts to fall out of them. But this helps me just get a little bit more coverage over everything, especially because I'm going to be growing this now on straight sand. Having at least something on there to help hold the moisture is going to be helpful, but you definitely need to be on top of your sprinklers too, having them go even every hour for a short amount of time if necessary. So that's something that you'll have to figure out on your own system, but growing on sand, directly straight on sand, is not the easiest thing to do in the world. So any sort of cover over there that's going to be temporary that I can remove is going to be something that helps to get that germination to go. So here's where things sit today. And I think today is day 7. So last night I came out here with a manual reel down at a 1/2 inch is where I'm going to start on this. And then over here, there's definitely good growth in here, but I'd like to put a little bit of more straw cover, just a really light layer on some of these bare spots, and just slightly more seed. You can see I have pretty good growth in here. It's just going to take a little bit of time to thicken up. And also I wanted to show you, a lot of people ask about this, what is causing this white color to happen, or on some of those seedlings that you just saw, they're even coming up in a white color or kind of a pinkish color on ryegrass. That is the mesotrione that is in that starter fertilizer, especially on ryegrass. It does this bleaching thing. It takes up to about 14 days to come out of that. It's just gonna have that kind of bleached out look or that pinkish look on some of that new seed, but no issues with it. It will just come out of that as you start to mow it all off. That's where things are at right now with this project. It's supposed to be almost 100 degrees here coming up this weekend. So hopefully that'll be the last bit of that, and then we get into our fall season and get into some nice cooler weather. All this stuff should start to really get into the season where it loves it the most, but we'll see how it all plays out. Thank you so much for watching today. See you next time.